live?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't done YouTube, so I don't know, you know, if people are showing up. I'm so used to Facebook. I'm trying to get out of that.
So so it's not letting me share my video. So
yeah, I haven't done YouTube, so I don't know, you know, if people are showing up. I'm so used to Facebook. I'm trying to get out of that.
Ooh. So it's not letting me share my video. So
so do I need to make you a host?
I think so.
Facebook, I'm trying to get out of that. Okay.
So it's not letting me share my video. So
hold on 1 second. So do I need to make you a host?
I think so.
Let me. Okay.
So it's not letting me share my video. So
hold on 1 second. So do I need to make you a host? Hey everybody, I know you guys are watching. I don't see where I can make you a host. Let me go back to Zoom. So do I need to make you a host? Hey everybody, I know you guys are watching. I don't see where I can make you a host. Let me see. Okay, so I'm making you a co-host.
Okay.
Hey everybody, I know you guys are watching. Is that working for you? I don't see where I can make you a host. Okay, so I'm making you. I can see you now.
Okay, good. You have some feedback though.
Oh, there go my feedback. Let me turn my volume down. Let me see. Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfect.
Hello? Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Look at my face.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I'm trying to make sure I don't have any feedback. I'm trying to make sure I don't have any feedback. I'm trying to make sure I don't have any feedback. Do you hear feedback? Do you guys hear feedback? I'm trying to make sure I don't have any feedback. Do you hear feedback? Do you guys hear feedback? Do you hear feedback? Do you guys hear feedback? Okay, I'm gonna say one more thing. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. I can hear you perfect. Can you hear me? No? Let's see. I don't hear any feedback, but I don't know. I don't see you talking.
Okay, guys. So hopefully we don't have any more feedback. Good afternoon. Y'all here with me on a Sunday. Courtney is one of the most amazing people that I know of in this industry. And she has done an outstanding job at explaining things to me because I literally know nothing about the marijuana industry other than, you know, buying and selling. And apparently there's so much more to this industry than that. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Lots of money is being made. Lots of money is going to be made. And she and I have discussed things around the lines of how we've been penalized as a community around it, but we haven't been able to benefit as a community around it. So she's going to go into in-depth detail as to how we can benefit, how we can invest, how we can receive returns off these billions of dollars that are coming into this industry. Okay.
Yeah.
So Courtney, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience and let's get right into it.
All right. Thank you, Nico, so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here as always. It's just such a necessary conversation, and we're going to kind of talk about weed from all angles. And more specifically, we're going to talk about weed and real estate, because I think that is the conversation that needs to be had, especially with your audience who is really into real estate. And I tell people all the time, do not invest in something you don't understand. But if you understand real estate, why are you not investing in real estate that touches cannabis? It's just kind of like something that works hand in hand. So what I have available is a slide deck to kind of just chat along with, because cannabis isn't super technical, but sometimes you need some pictures. So we're going to do that. So what I'm going to do is share my screen in just a second. But just as a background, and Nico, thank you so much for the introduction. I have been teaching investing for about 5 years, been teaching investing in cannabis for, oh my gosh, I feel like it's just been a long time. So that being said, is that it's just been a joy and a pleasure. But one of the things that makes me really sad is that cannabis is very, very white. And all the people who have been adversely affected by cannabis are not. And it really hurts my heart. And it's one of those things that you don't know unless you know. And then we're able to have those real live conversations. So I'm just going to pop this up. And we should do this. We can start. Okay, Nico, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let's go. All right. So we are talking about weed. I get so excited. I'm like, yes. I was in Vegas maybe about 2 months ago, and I was at MedMen, and I was just having a whole ball messing around at MedMen. If you don't know what MedMen is, we're going to talk about it. MedMen is a Vegas, it's like a California Vegas experience. So it's a full dispensary. Really cool thing. They want to be like the Apple of marijuana. So their whole experience is just very clean, very chic. And you're talking to what we call a bud tender, and they're just giving you the rundown on everything that they have there. So just a really fun experience. But again, we'll talk about how they're able to function. And we all know that marijuana is straight illegal. So we'll talk about that too. So what I do is I'm an attorney, and we'll talk about that in my legal experience, but I'm an attorney. I'm not your attorney. I'm going to keep that all the way funky. But also, anytime that we talk about anything in the investing industry, I'm not telling you to buy anything. I'm not getting you to consider to buy anything. Like, if you want to, that's fine, but you need to do your own research. So me or Excel University, don't be saying, oh, well, Nico said and Courtney said, You have to do your own research. So basically we're not saying, and cannabis is extremely risky. So again, these are things that you need to do your own diligence about, but we're going to have that conversation. So I want to get that out of the way so we can really dig deep and have fun. So, like I said, I kind of talked about who I am and what I do. I have been in the financial services industry for over 15 years. I took my mom from bankrupt to retired in 11 years. I worked as a 401k specialist at one of the top investment firms in the world, managed portfolio for approximately $3 million as a high net worth advisor. I'm a former stockbroker, former investment advisor, and I've been teaching how to invest in cannabis for about 2 years now. So it's just been a whirlwind, because as you know, or as you will figure out, nobody really knows what they're doing in cannabis. It's still such a very new industry, and you're able to kind of get in at the ground floor. But again, you have to kind of educate yourself to get there. So just bear with me for a second. So you may have seen me talking about, you may have been seeing me talking about cannabis across the you might see me anywhere. I mean, I could be anywhere. So recently I was talking about cannabis and women in cannabis in Philadelphia as part of Philadelphia Tech Startup Week. I was at Total Wealth Live in Dallas talking about marijuana. I was also on TV talking about getting into the cannabis industry in Philadelphia. And I was at the Stocks and Stilettos conference in May of 2018, all kind of talking about cannabis. So I've been doing this for a while, and I'm an expert in cannabis. So that's where we are. So what I like to do about talking about cannabis is kind of defining our terms and knowing where we are, because a lot of people have ideas about what cannabis is, how it works, all this other stuff. And again, like most of us know, I mean, I'm a millennial, so I had DARE and in elementary school. So I don't even know what DARE stood for, but they were just telling us how bad drugs were and exactly what they were. And they said all the time, don't use marijuana. Marijuana is a gateway drug. And that was the propaganda that was given to us as babies. So a couple of things, one, marijuana is not a gateway drug. They knew that not to be true when they started that conversation in the 1970s, but here we are. The government not always telling the truth. So that's why you have to do your own research, but here we are. So cannabis. So cannabis is basically, it's a plant. All it is a plant. It's a tall plant. They say that it originated in Asia. I don't know if it did or not. I'm not sure, but it's been used for centuries. It's been used as a fiber. So when we think about hemp, they said that one of the things that I was reading and listening to, they said the United States would not be here but for cannabis. And I was like, all right, are we reaching or is this legit? So, and the reason being is they said that when you're sailing, they're saying that the sails were made out of hemp and the rope was made out of hemp. So how did everybody get to United States? They came by boat. So if they didn't have hemp or they didn't have they weren't able to have their sails and they weren't going to have rope. So if anybody's ever been on a boat, you need sails and you need rope. So that's kind of what I thought was like, that's really interesting to say. But it's been used as a fiber. So hemp fiber, from my understanding also, and again, like you can't really get the real goods, but they were saying the Declaration of Independence was actually on hemp paper. So it's been used as a medicine. It's also been used as a recreational drug. So that's where we are. And there's cannabinoids, what we call chemicals that are unique to the plant. There's THC, which we all know because that's what gets you high. And then we have cannabidiol, which is CBD, which is non-psychoactive. So you have something that gives you high, and then you have something that's more what we consider therapeutic. But either way, THC is actually therapeutic. And a lot of the things that are being said is like, oh, it's just a thing to get you high. But no, actually, it's just as therapeutic, but it also has this kind of like ancillary side effect of getting you high. So what I have on the left-hand side is industrial hemp, which is legal, and we'll talk about how it's legal. And then we have marijuana, which is illegal. So those two things it makes life a little bit difficult. So I know a lot of people have been, hemp actually just became legal in December. So it hasn't even been a year, December 2018.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. But you probably saw CBD and hemp floating around probably for a couple of years before that. And the reason being is that, and I really like to put this in perspective, President Obama in the 2014 Farm Bill started a pilot program for hemp. So it was President Obama who said, let's make this happen. Then when the farm bill is actually renewed every 5 years, so when the farm bill came up for renewal, which was under the person that's currently in the White House, President Trump,
your nemesis, huh?
he signed the farm bill, which actually made hemp completely legal. But President Obama started the whole party. And I like to kind of put that in perspective because people are like, oh, President Trump. And I'm just like, he just kind of finished up what President Obama started. So, but then you still have marijuana, which is illegal. And that's kind of where we are right now. It's like I said, we're in this kind of funky space. I'm going to talk about more about how we're in this funky space. So what's going on? So industrial hemp is anything that's under 0.3% of THC. That's what's going to be considered industrial hemp, and that's going to be considered legal. So what comes from industrial hemp? CBD. We have fiber comes from hemp. Hemp oil, hemp hearts. Actually, hemp hearts is probably one of the most protein-rich plant sources that exist. So I like to tell people about that. They're like, oh, just all they think about hemp is with CBD, and that there's a lot more to it. But then you also have marijuana, which is anything over 0.3% of THC. And if you know marijuana, if you know getting high, 0.3% of THC ain't nothing. Nothing. When I say nothing, I mean nothing. So it's just interesting, kind of where they make this line, like, oh, this is industrial hemp, but this is marijuana. It's like, really? Like, really? Okay. Nobody's smoking anything with 0.4% of THC and they're going to get high. Just going to keep it funky with you. So
Where does getting high begin at?
I don't know. I'd probably say like maybe 5, maybe 7, something to get a buzz, but nothing as low as what they have in the feds. So, and I want to say like, and that gives me a good point, like marijuana in the feds. And I feel like it's like Kool and the Gang. You anybody remember Kool and the Gang? I feel like marijuana in the feds, Kool and the Gang. So marijuana is completely illegal, just dumb illegal, just dumb. That's it. That's all we have. That's it. So I give you this kind of thing, but then we have kind of this other thing going on, which I call the United States of marijuana. Look at this nonsense. Like, what's going on here? So wait, you just told me that we are straight illegal. Nobody can do anything. And then here we go, boom. We have this multicolor map that's showing you all different levels of how weed, or I'm going to call it weed or marijuana, is kind of done on the state level. Huh? This is not quite right. You know, you're going, how is this even possible? Well, we'll talk about it. So what I want to clear up on this map, because I want to make it very clear about where we are. Okay, so there's about 11 states that have legalized recreational and medicinal marijuana. So you can go to a dispensary if you have a medical ailment or not. It doesn't really matter because it's completely legal. So that's where we are in 11 states. So of course, California, of course, Nevada, like of course, you know, Colorado, all the big places we talked about. But one of the other places, Michigan. A lot of people don't talk about Michigan.
Didn't know about Michigan. I keep telling people Indiana. I mean, just looking at your map, you know, I invest in Indiana. And I'm trying to get a lot of people invested in Indiana. And based on the map that you're showing me, that seems to be, I mean, it's right in between what's medically legal statewide, and then Michigan and Illinois which is medically and recreationally legal. So to me, Indiana more than likely is going to be the next state to fall into, at the very least, medically legal.
Yeah, they should. I mean, because like, again, like you said, they're being sandwiched. And I'm really surprised that Indiana is taking this position, especially like they in Illinois are kind of, I've seen that they kind of run close to each other in terms of
they mirror each other with a lot of laws and legislation. Yeah.
I'm really kind of shocked about that. I was like, interesting. I was like, all right, Indiana, you'll get it together. I was like, y'all get it together at some point. But you have Illinois and you have Ohio, and then you're kind of looking. So Illinois just legalized in June to be ready to go as of January 1, 2020. So also I gave you DC. If you see DC on the map, it's red and it says a mess. And I mean it. So you can gift somebody marijuana in DC and that's fine, but you can't really sell it because remember, DC is part of the federal government. So it's just like I said, it's a whole mess. DC's a mess. And I just kind of go, all right, DC, whatever you guys do, but they are surrounded by Maryland. Virginia is not quite on board. And there's a lot of places that are in gray that may be okay for CBD oil medicinally, but I think that kind of causes so many other bits of confusion that I don't even talk about them. I'm like, you know what? We could be here all day talking about the levels of confusion when it comes to CBD. CBD comes from hemp, but they're not kind of allowing this medical marijuana thing. So I was just like, you know what?
Can we talk about CBD for a second?
Sure.
So someone says, oh, Nico, I have this miracle CBD and it cleared up my seizures and this and this and that. And I'm like, oh, wow. You know, I'm like, you know, let me buy this. And so I spend $100 on the CBD. I take it exactly the way that they tell me to take it. And it has zero effect. And I'm just like, what kind of BS is going on here?
So that's the other problem. So everybody's saying, oh, I have CBD, it's this wonder drug. Yeah, I will say that CBD and THC can be wonder drugs, and they've actually been using a synthetic version of THC called Marinol since the 80s. So there are real medicinal properties, but again, you don't know what you're getting. You have no idea because the FDA is not regulating it. They're like, we're not even talking about it, we're not dealing with it. And if you say that, if they see that there's any claims that kind of says, well, this will this will save your seizures. This will kind of save all your ailments. They've actually been cracking down on companies that are doing those claims.
And they should, because I literally, I don't call a lot of things scam because I just don't think that everything works for everybody. But that particular product, to me, I felt scammed. It like had zero effect. And I'm like a purist. And what I mean is that, like, I haven't taken cold medicine in like years. I don't take aspirin. Like, I am extremely limited on what I put into my body. So anything that I do put into my body should hit me pretty hard. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I should see the effects of it immediately. And I saw zero anything. I mean, nothing. I'm like, what is this? I just felt like I had a bunch of greasy oil in my mouth.
Ooh. So here's the other thing. CBD oil does help seizures. There is a product called Charlotte's Web, and the company is out of Colorado. They're actually publicly traded in Canada. And their product did help with Dravet syndrome. And there's another syndrome that are very pervasive and kind of life-altering seizures.
Charlotte's Web, huh?
Charlotte's Web.
So you got to get the right company with the right mixture.
Right. So it's kind of like vetting. It's like how you would vet anything else. I mean, people are saying, oh, I get this CBD oil. Well, who is it from? Do they have, information about their testing? Do they test? Like, I need more information. I don't want the kind of blanket statement that says, oh, this is this wonder drug. You could be giving me castor oil or cod liver oil, and how would you know the difference?
Like. Yeah.
So you have that going on. So again, I like to tell people, like, you got to vet your sources. It's kind of like with GNC. Like, it's basically, that is what the CBD products are right now. So, if you go to GNC, they're just like, listen, we're not like, diagnosing any ailments. We don't know. This may help. This may not help. We don't know. Be blessed. And that's pretty much what CBD is now. And I really wish that we would get a better framework to kind of just, basically protect consumers. Because if you're taking something that you think it's one thing and you're taking another, you could actually hurt yourself if you're allergic to the other thing.
Right.
Same thing like with what is it? That imitation crab meat.
Right.
I know people who actually are allergic to imitation crab meat. They're not allergic to any other seafood, but it's not imitation crab meat is imitation crab meat. So it's not even really crab. It isn't crab. Let me clarify. It's not crab. But again, same kind of idea. If I think I'm getting CBD oil and you give me cod liver oil or whatever you're passing off as CBD, I may be allergic to that other thing, but I don't even know because I don't know what you're giving me. So I just tell people to be really judicious about where you're going. If you know a company to be a CBD company, like a Charlotte's Web, then I would kind of start there. I would see what they're talking about and then kind of vet that company that you're looking at against kind of like what we would consider a gold standard. And I'm not saying Charlotte's Web is perfect. That's not what I'm saying at all. But at least we know that them to be a relatively vetted company. They're operating in Colorado. They're publicly traded in Canada. They have real live stories of people that they've helped. And that's how they got their name. The little girl's name was Charlotte Iggy. And she was suffering, like I said, from, I believe it's Dravet syndrome, which were those seizures that she was having like 6 a day, 8 a day. I mean, like violently shaking. And so much so that like she just didn't have a life. I mean, so now she got the CBD oil that actually worked, and now she's down to maybe like 6 a month. So that's a drastic change in quality of life. But again, that's a vetted source. I can't account for anybody else, but that is at the very minimum a vetted source. So I just be very careful about that. Now, Texas does allow CBD oil also for medicinal purposes, but I didn't want to get into that. But there are a lot of companies that are trying to get into the Texas market to grow. And the reason being is that Texas just has really good climate. So I try to share that. And so just to put it in perspective about marijuana and how it grows and what that does. So with marijuana, if you're growing marijuana for THC comes out of the resin. It's in like the sticky part. You talk about the sticky icky, the stickier, the better. So you want a warm climate. The warmer the climate, the better you're going to get with the resin, more THC you're going to get. So that's the first thing. Second thing, hemp grows pretty well in like a temperate climate. So Kentucky is actually the best place to grow hemp in the United States. So if you're looking for real estate opportunities, you may want to say, I may want to get some land in Kentucky. So
on my way.
So that's the thing. And the reason why is that Kentucky has really good climate, but they have this clay in their soil for some other reason. And I don't know if it's a function of being close to the coal mines or not, has a clay in the soil that actually really helps hemp grow. And Kentucky was growing hemp prior to it being, I can't say it was illegal. So in 1937, they were growing hemp up until 1937, no problems. Then the DuPonts came in. There were a couple of different players that plastics became kind of hot, and they wanted an opportunity for plastics. But if you have this amazing fiber that kind of does everything, you can make concrete out of hemp. So they knew that to be
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's called hempcrete. So they knew it to be a natural competitor of, what they were trying to put in the market. So basically, everybody had their own agenda when it came to marijuana. They've been trying to basically criminalize marijuana or kind of create this nasty narrative around marijuana since the early 1900s, the turn of the century. If you could read some of the transcripts on the floor, they're like, cocaine makes Black men strong and they rape our white women. I mean, it's really like on the floor of the House of Representatives. You're like, oh my gosh. So that was kind of the conversation all the way back then. So as time went on, they were trying to really push that agenda.
I've heard different things over the years that it was propaganda from the lumber and cotton industries because they wanted to pull their products in, and so that's what I heard over the years.
Everybody had a vested interest in hemp not being as hot as they needed to be. So what they did in 1937 is they passed what's called the Marijuana Tax Act. So they basically taxed marijuana they taxed cannabis. I want to be very clear. They taxed it in terms of hemp and they taxed it in terms of marijuana because it was also being used as a pharmacological. It had a pharmacological. So basically it had drug use that dentists were using, doctors were using, and then they basically were getting taxed on it. And they're like, so I could do this other thing, aspirin, whatever the case may be, and it's cheaper for me to give it to my patient than it is for me to use this marijuana over here because of the tax. So then on top of that, when you're growing your hemp and now you're getting taxed on it, now this cheap plant that you were growing is now not cheap anymore. You see that? So that's what was going on in 1937. So that's why Kentucky's industry went away. But if you know, when the Farm Bill was coming out and they were really kind of pushing for it, all the Kentucky people were hands on deck. So I tell people, I want you to know this background because when you start seeing stuff happening, you're like, oh, so it's kind of like the same stuff if you're having a conversation with your family members. If you know Aunt so-and-so is not coming to Thanksgiving this year. And you're like, why? They're like, oh, because Aunt such and such is going to be there. And just like, they're both cool. I met them, but like in 1985, before you were born, they had this huge knockout, blowout fight, and they haven't talked in 30 years. So you see what I'm saying? So once you know the background story, then you're like, oh, that makes sense. If Aunt so-and-so is going to be there, that Aunt such and such is not going to make it, or vice versa. But if you don't know it, because to you, you're like, wait, I don't get it. So it's the same thing. I mean, remember, we're dealing with people. And when you start learning about people and how they operate, you know that you have to know this backstory to actually understand how to move forward. I was in a real estate deal maybe about 3 weeks ago. We're working on a deed to get some land dedicated. And the guy was like, I have to give you all this background. We're just looking at him like, for real. And he was like, listen, I know it's boring as hell, but guess what? He's like, context is 85% of knowing a problem. Understanding the context of where it came from. And I was like, he's right. So when he was going through it, now I'm like, okay. He's like, this person gave this land to this person and blah, blah, blah. And we condemned all of it. Oh, okay, now I know how we got here. And now I know how the deeds have to be done to make sure that the title is clear.
Right.
So it's like, but you got to know the context. So anyway, so we're looking at this map. So, you have about 33 states that have approved medical marijuana. Then you also have 11 states that have recreational and medical. And then you have these other states. I don't know what they're doing. Some of them have approved CBD oil for medicinal use, but some of them haven't. It's real hazy. And as you can see, the daggone South can't seem to get it together. This is Bible, and it's not even really the Bible Belt. It's just the South. They just can't seem to get it together. but it will be fine. They'll work it out at some point. But I wanted to give you this background so everybody understood where we are and kind of how this is happening. But let's look at these things again. Illegal, and then we have this. So you should be going, huh? How?
Right.
Wait a second. They're like, I thought there was a constitution and a supremacy clause, and I thought the feds were right, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So let's clear this up. So what is Congress doing? So basically, in terms of these states that exist and they're doing whatever they're doing, legalizing recreational, legalizing medicinal, whatever they're doing, Congress just says, listen, as long as you guys aren't doing anything particularly crazy, we're going to leave you alone. And I shouldn't say Congress. That's the Cole memo was 2013 under President Obama. And they said, listen, this is the Attorney General. They said, we're going to leave you alone as long as you guys aren't doing anything additionally illegal. And what I mean by additionally illegal is, are you selling weed to kids? Okay, then no, that's not going to quite work. But that would happen in 2013, because guess what happened in 2012? 2012, Colorado and Washington legalized recreational marijuana. So can you really do that? So they said, listen, let's make this very clear, because the Attorney General said they're not going to do it. Now, who's the Attorney General? He's the head of the Department of Justice. So if anybody was going to crack down on anyone, it was going to be the Department of Justice. They were going to come in like gangbusters. So the Department of Justice said, listen, we're going to stand down. So then also Congress followed up and they said, listen, as long as you guys have a whole like legal framework in terms of medical marijuana as a state, we're going to leave you. We're not going to give the DOJ money to actually go enforce it. So you're like, okay, so it's not legal, but they're basically going to leave you alone for now. And now they actually have the new appropriations bill that if you have legal marijuana or legal medicinal marijuana or legal recreational marijuana in your state you're operating under your state law, they'll leave you alone. They're not basically saying we're not going to give the DOJ money, the Department of Justice money to go bother you. So it's not legal, but we're basically leaving you alone. Okay, so that's where we are right now. That is a current bill that's on the floor for appropriations. We'll see what happens with it. We're thinking about there may be a shutdown. This may be kind of part of the mix-up. I don't know. But what Congress has also done is they have the Safe Banking Act. It was passed in the House, and then it's kind of in the Senate. It may just hang out, and it may not go anywhere. The Safe Banking Act. So here's the thing, and this is what causes a whole bunch of problems. And this is how real estate, the REITs in cannabis actually fix this problem, or kind of like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, but it's still something. So the Safe Banking Act, if you heard anything about cannabis at all, is that you can't get a banking account. And I teach cannabis, and I had my Stripe account shut down because they were like, oh, you said cannabis.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, I just teach, guys. I teach about legal cannabis. They're like, that's fine, but you said cannabis, so no, we can't fool with you. So they shut down my account.
Wow.
So I just tell people, just keep that in mind. So, but again, and the reason being, especially with banks, if you have a cannabis company and you're getting money and the bank takes your money, the federal agents can come in and either revoke their FDIC insurance. They can limit it. They can do a whole bunch. They can get them in there for money laundering, because remember, we have a criminal activity coming into a legal bank. So this is what's causing a lot of problems. So the House passed the Safe Banking Act. Now,
when did they pass that?
They passed it earlier this year.
Oh, just this year?
Mm-hmm. It was like in the last couple of months.
So how were people, because I remember when I was in California back in 2013, mm-hmm. and a good friend of mine, she was a grower and she had indoor, outdoor. She was selling her babies to different dispensaries in, Northern California. And the bank intercepted like $500,000 that this one particular business had made. I think they had made that in like a week, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on it. It might even been 600,000. It was a substantial amount of money. And the feds intercepted that money and just, they never got that money back either.
Oh no, they're not. It's just going to
be. They intercepted the money. I'm not sure what accounts, so maybe this is why what you're saying, but yeah, they had like $500,000 intercepted.
Yep, that's exactly what happened. So what ends up happening is you have to go through a third party. you kind of have to go through somebody or like and it's kind of like an intermediary, for lack of a better word, or you just deal in cash. Like when we went to MedMen, we just had to give them cash. Like they have an ATM in there. We went to the ATM before because we already knew that we had to use cash, and that was pretty much it. That's all we could do. Because again, once you add Visa, MasterCard, American Express, now we have issues because now we're transmitting through a bank.
Right, because it's federally insured. So yeah.
So once you get that FDIC insurance, but
right.
you can, if it's not a federal, so you have a system of banking with there's a federal charter bank and there's a state charter bank, and you may be able to work with a state charter bank. Because their charter isn't connected to the federal government. But again, they have FDIC insurance. So there's a lot going on. And I tell people, you just have to be a very cognizant, investor. And because again, like if you're all dealing in cash, you know what cash does. Cash gets its own feet and goes. So just be very, very careful. But everybody was really, really hype about this particular bill that I'm talking about now, which is the MORE Act. People said, oh my gosh, the House passed this bill that's going to, basically expunge everybody's record and give everybody money. And I was like, no, I mean, kind of, but not really. I mean, kind of, not. We're almost there. So it's called the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act of 2019. So just a short the MORE Act, because if you say that 3 times fast, it's not going to work out. So it's the MORE Act. There's a companion bill. There's 2 bills in the House and the Senate. So let's kind of go back to civics. There's a bill has to pass the House, and it also has to pass the Senate before it actually goes to the president for his signature. So that's kind of the whole thing. So it starts any bill, and this is the revenue bill, or it's the origination clause of the Constitution. I'm an attorney, so I will get there. But I share that with you to say any bill that has to do with revenue, and I'll talk about where the revenue part comes in, has to start in the House. It has to originate in the House. That's why this bill originated in the House. So that's where we are. So this bill taxes marijuana at 5%. Which isn't bad. It's kind of along the lines of what tobacco gets taxed at right now. So not a crazy tax. And then also they have an expungement clause in there, basically expunging records. They also have, there's going to be a cannabis trust fund. And of that money, 60% is going to go to the Attorney General to basically deal with the expungement and the legal aspects. And then they also have 40% going to the Small Business Administration, basically getting them funding for basically people who have been adversely affected. They say the most adversely affected by the war on drugs. So that'd be people who were locked up. There are people who were in the household of those that were locked up. So that's kind of like, that's who they define as the most adversely affected by the war on drugs. So they're basically trying to infuse money into the system in a way to kind of right or wrong. Because
but you know what's odd about that? They're still arresting people.
Oh, they're going to too. No, we haven't done anything. This is just past the House Judiciary Committee. And that's what I wanted to get into. It really hasn't gone anywhere. It hasn't hit the House floor, anything. They're going to continue to arrest people because the law of the land is the Controlled Substances Act of 1970.
But it seems they put in so much effort behind it. Like I was talking to a friend of mine who did 8 years for having a couple of pounds of marijuana in the Carolinas. And, he's out and, he was just telling me he just bought a house and, he turned his life around. But, 8 years of his life gone for a couple of pounds. And then he was just saying that his relative is in jail right now. And it has been for a year without even going to court yet on the same, something similar for even less, actually.
Oh, they're still enforcing marijuana that's sold on
heavily.
And that's what, good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Like, don't think because all these people, these other people are getting money off of this legalized weed that they're not going to lock up whoever on the corner. Please, let's be very, very clear. Because, and that's how we know that there's a double standard. Like if you're getting money legally over here in this dispensary with this, storefront and has apartments on the top, you're getting money over here, but down the street, I can do the same thing on the corner and I
have a whole year.
And I'm going to get multiple years. I got a fed case. And then on top of that, when you get that fed case, which I love about this particular bill, is that you can't get federal aid. You can't get federal housing. What else can you get? There's so many things that you're limited from.
Student loans.
Yeah, federal aid, student loans. I mean, all of it. You can't get anything once you get that case on you. So not only you come out, you've lost, to your friend's point, and I actually have a friend too, similar situation, lost 8 years of their life. And then they come out and they're like, oh, we're going to get bet, we're going to allow you re-entry into society, but I can't find a place to live because I don't have a job yet. So I can't get the help that I need to get on my feet. You're not allowing me to get student loans because I can't get, so now I'm not able to get a better education. I mean, or get myself on the right track by, educating myself. What do you want me to do? You just want to put me in perpetual slavery on the outside now. And while somebody else is getting money for the same thing I did. Got it.
Right. Like the who was it that the House representative, I can't remember his name, but he was adamant about, the laws against marijuana. And now he's out of the Senate and his family has invested millions into the marijuana industry.
Oh, Boehner. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly who I'm talking about.
So his company, the company he's been working with is Acreage Holdings. So, and they actually got into an agreement with Canopy Growth Company, which is kind of like the Walmart of cannabis in Canada. And we'll talk about them in a second. So once, and they have an agreement that Canopy is going to purchase acreage as soon as marijuana becomes legal. So that's the agreement that they have going on with each other. So guess who's going to be pulling a whole bunch of money at people to get this stuff through Congress that you were just against, not 2 years ago.
Yeah, right. You were heavily against it. Mm-hmm. And now one of the sole benefactors.
Basically. So it's just, so I just could put that in perspective for everybody. But the MORE Act tries to fix some of this. They try to fix some of the federal rules and regulations that basically prohibit you, once you get a case, that you can't get anything that you need on the outside. So I really like that about the bill. And there's other bills going around. There's a bill called Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol Act, and that's in the House. There's a Marijuana Revenue and Regulation Act, which is in the Senate. And then they have the Marijuana Freedom and Opportunity Act, which is both in the House and the Senate. So they're basically companion bills. So Congress is doing something, but the problem is, and this is why voting matters, is that they have a majority in the House, but they don't have a majority in the Senate. So the reason why we can't get old boy, we may be able to get him impeached. We're going to start the proceedings on impeachment, but the final verdict comes from the Senate. And it's actually majority Republican. What do you think they're going to do with a Republican president? Like, let's really think about it. So
it's house for tea.
Right. Exactly. And so you have that going on. So, but also he's not for the legalization of marijuana either. So how do you think all of this is going to happen?
Really?
No. I mean, somebody may bruise his palm at some point. I don't know. But I mean, as his statement on the record, and he has to sign. Now, they can go back and kind of override his veto. But here we are again. We're already close on margins. And everybody, I've noticed, and it really makes me angry, people like, oh, my vote doesn't matter. Heck yeah, your vote matters. Because
but you know what? A lot of people like, a lot of Black leaders, the kind of the outside guys. What's that guy's name? Tariq, something or other. He was adamant about Black people not voting,
and that's silly because look at what
he had so many Black men and women convinced that voting was a waste of time and energy. I just thought he was extremely ignorant, only because he also didn't offer a solution to it. It's just like, don't do it. What's going to change? And now you see things like these bills, the Moores, and who's in the Senate. You see how all of it actually does affect everything.
Right.
Everything. So that young Black man that is getting out of jail, or his life was affected by him selling marijuana, you could have helped him indirectly, but you told everybody Black not to vote and that their vote didn't matter.
Yep.
And it just frustrates me. Tariq Nasheed, thank you.
I was going to say it was Tariq Nasheed. I was going to say that. I was like, but I didn't want to speak.
I have a couple of things that before we spoke, I was listening to a few podcasts and things, just because this is not my lane, but I am very interested in it. Again, for investment purposes, I want to go check out some property in Kentucky, and I want to see, where Indiana is going with their legalization process. But one thing that Vanessa said at the State of the Black Dollar, where we were both at, and thank you for speaking there. She said, when in a recession, what sells is drugs, sex, and alcohol. She said that, that's as recession proof as you're going to get. And that's why I was like, we really need to have this conversation on my platform so that people know that drugs, during a recession sell. Like that's one way to secure the bag and make sure that your family consistently eats. The other thing that I saw was I've heard of getting licensed to participate in this business can cost upward of 50 million. And then I heard that they were also doing what's called micro licensing, where you can get in on a much lower scale. And then the third point that I wanted to mention was I heard of a cafe in Southern California where you can openly smoke weed and have edibles at a public restaurant. I just thought that was astounding, and the direction that we're going as a whole.
So sex, drugs and alcohol are going to be your most recession-proof thing, but also gambling is one of those too. And there's a lot of real estate, and we'll talk about the REITs in a second. Real estate, what is a casino? It's real estate. It's the whole point of this real estate to be there is to produce income. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at when the recession happens, because I think everybody gets afraid of the recession. They're like, oh my gosh, the recession is going to happen. Get your money up, get yourself in a better position, because at the end of the day, it's just think about it, it's a big economy-wide sale. And if you think of it that way, now you're not afraid of it. You're excited for it. Now you're saying, okay, what can I take advantage of? Like, remember on Black Friday, I have a couple of friends that are like, I have a list for what I'm looking at on Black Friday. I'm like, okay, make that list for the things that you're looking for in the recession.
Right. Another thing someone said to me a long time ago, they said, Nico, you know what? In a recession, a lot of people are losing. So what does that mean? A lot of people are winning.
Right.
So like all you have to do is make sure that you're on the winning side, because if people are losing, somebody got to win.
Mm-hmm. And it's just a transfer of wealth. It's going from one person to another. So keep that on. It's like same thing in the stock market. People are like, oh, the stock market is down. Oh my gosh. Like, no, some people are shorting. And if they're shorting, they're making money. They're doing puts, making money. So again, it's always a place for you to make money. It just depends on your positioning, because if you have to look at things through an abundance mindset, you have to say, okay, where is the opportunity? Not, oh, woe is me, something's wrong, I can't fix it, whatever. Like, look at the opportunities. There's always an opportunity. Like if everybody's upset, like if somebody's upset, they're like, oh, there's a drought going on. What's going? So okay, so that means that you should be. If people need water, then you should, if it's a hot summer day, then you should be selling water.
Sure.
Right, exactly. If it's cold, then maybe you should be selling hot chocolate. Like, again, like instead of you complaining about the temperature of the weather, see how you can take advantage of the temperature and the weather. Same thing with the economy. So the thing is to kind of get into the REITs and the bigger conversation is, what can you do if you're just sitting here from cannabis? Like, what can you do? And I before I even get into that, so we have micro lending. Micro lending is what we consider part of the social equity piece, because what a lot of legislators, I shouldn't say a lot, some legislators have been really focused on, how do we right the wrongs of the Black and brown communities that have been adversely affected by the war on drugs. So but they also know, because of the war on drugs, and this is a conversation I've had from the economic standpoint, is when you remove a income producing person out of a household, change the integrity of the household, but you also change the integrity. If you do that on a widespread basis, you will change the integrity of a neighborhood. So therefore, you have increased foreclosures. You have a lot going on. When you have a lot of foreclosures, what happens, Nico? The property values go down.
Exactly.
But then you also, on top of that, had redlining to really make it even worse. So you have redlining, then you have taxes. Right. Then you have all this other stuff going on. And I tell people is that, like, everybody was adversely affected by the war on drugs, because there's not one person that I know that's a Black or brown person that hasn't had some kind of interaction with the criminal justice system when it comes around marijuana. And that affects you as a whole. You know, even if you are what we call somebody who's not in the life or not in the street, you were tapped on to help get so-and-so money for an attorney. So again, you had resources that could have been into income producing assets trying to help somebody get out of a jam.
Right.
So there's a lot going on. But again, I like talking about that. And then even the cafes in California is completely legal. They're legal for recreation and for medicinal. They were the first medicinally first medicinal
legislation.
They were not, that was 1996. They were kind of slow on the uptake on recreational, but here's my problem with Cali. Cali's taxes are so high on the plant itself is that you're better off getting from the black market. I mean, real rap. So I think that's also another problem that needs to be dealt with, is that are we taxing so much that we still create a black market? Because even in that case, it's still cheaper. So I think that's a conversation that needs to be had. But in terms of what we can do is educate, position, train, and execute. I think those are the things that are the big things that you can do. Educate yourself on the marijuana industry, because at the end of the day, we don't know it. To what we knew or what we heard about it isn't kind of what's fact. So that's the first thing. Position yourself. Be in certain rooms. I mean, there's a lot of different conferences popping up. Go to them. Get educated.
How do you find out about the conferences? Because I never see or hear anything until it's over.
Google. MJ BizCon is a big one, and I think they're in Vegas this week. I think MJ Biz is in Vegas. I think MJ Biz. I mean, there's a lot. Just like no, they're in December. It's in December. It's December 11th through the 13th. So again, there's a lot of different opportunities to jump in and be educated, and then execute, because a lot of people are like, what should I do? What should I do? They do nothing. So you have to execute, train yourself. And then I think it's about using your gifts and talents and moving them into the marijuana industry. If you're good at marketing, they're going to need you in marijuana. If you have a accounting degree, they're certainly going to need you, because right now there's a IRS prohibition on you taking any necessary expenses of business if you're dealing with a Schedule 1 or a Schedule 2 drug. So if I have a marijuana business I'm selling, I can't, and I made, my revenue was $1,000, but my expenses were $800. I have a profit of $200, but I have to pay taxes on $1,000. So don't you think you need an accountant or an attorney that try to help, structure your business, so you're going to get hit with taxes, but put yourself in the best position possible. And that's why all those things require people's money. Like, you can't, if you're just kind of starting up, a lot of people want to touch the plant, but if you're just starting up, you need to put yourself in a position where you're not going to get beat in the head and taxes off top. So that's the bigger thing. So So there's basically 5 ways to invest in cannabis, and we're going to talk about cannabis and real estate in a second. You have your Canadian companies, you have the US companies, you basically have picks and shovels. Investing in marijuana is competition, and then you have pooled investments. Canadian companies, I talked about one, which is Canopy Growth. We have US companies, Acreage is one of them. Pick and shovel plays. So anybody heard about the gold rush? So they were, back in the day, they were actually mining for gold. And the people who really made the money weren't the people mining. They were the people who were giving them picks and shovels in order for them to mine the gold. So that's another position. Like Levi Strauss was the Levi jeans. They were a company that came out of the gold rush. They were providing pants that were protective for people to wear while they were mining. They were providing it out of a denim because their pants were getting jacked up. That little divot on the side that was enable people to put their tools in without ripping the side of their pants. So again, that's how they started in the 1850s, and now look at them. So they're publicly traded. They actually were off the market for about 30 years as a private company, but they recently IPO'd, I believe, in April of this year. And then
I've heard that they also are switching from cotton to hemp.
They may. That probably makes a lot of sense.
I heard that last year, that Levi's was switching from cotton to hemp, and they were going to start producing. And with you saying that, the gold rush, now the hemp rush, so they're just staying in tune with their whole business model.
Oh yeah, Levi ain't gonna get left behind. Also, you have competition. A lot of people are like, what are the alcohol and the tobacco companies going to do? They're going to get in. What do you think they're going to do? Just like with anybody else. But they have, one of the things that marijuana companies are lacking is capital. And what do as we talked about, recession-proof companies, you have your tobacco, you have your alcohol. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to invest in those companies, right?
Right.
So, there's a reason why Altria Group, which is the parent company of Philip Morris USA, is investing in Kronos, which is the third biggest company in Canada in terms of investment in cannabis. So there's a reason for all of that. So I like to share that with people, that there's a thing. And then you also have like people like, well, I don't know what to choose. Then you have like ETFs that are available for you to invest in marijuana if you want to get involved in the industry and you don't know which company to pick.
What's
But more,
ETF?
an ETF is an exchange traded fund. So it's basically a pool of companies together that are traded on the stock exchange that you can invest in.
Okay.
So it's like, so it's kind of, think of it this way. You're like, hey, I'm sorry.
Like a bundle?
Yeah, it's like a bundle. So you're saying, I want a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. You know, I want kind of I want to have a touch marijuana, but I just don't know what to pick. That's kind of how you get exposure. Kind of thinking like, hey, I want to invest in makeup, but you're like, do I invest in Fenty, which is kind of through Louis Vuitton and Hennessy, or do I invest in Ulta, or do I invest in Sephora, which is also a member of or do I invest in a makeup ETF? You know, so again, you're like, okay, that's kind of the way that you position yourself. But this is what I wanted to talk about before we got done, is that we have the cannabis REITs, and a REIT is a real estate investment trust. So again, it's about investing in the things that you understand and know, and then you use that to kind of, you know, level up, because there's certain things that you'll see in a REIT's portfolio that you're like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have that because you know real estate. And now you're just like, I can't invest in you because you have something in your portfolio that's not quite right. But if you're somebody who doesn't do real estate, whatever sticks out to you is not going to stick out to them. I say the same thing with my mom. My mom is a retired nurse. So we would talk about things that she loved at work. She's like, I love this needle. I like this kind of, you know, cuff, but I don't like these other things. I'm like, all right, well, if you love this needle, why don't you invest in it? Why don't you move from being a consumer to being an investor? So same thing here with this cannabis REITs. You know real estate, you want to get involved in cannabis, so why don't you just put the two together? So I want to give you guys an overview of what a REIT is. So to be a REIT, an organization you have to be a U.S. company, a corporation, trust, or association, U.S. company. You have to be managed. And then you also have to pay out 90% of your taxable income as dividends. And you're like, what? That's crazy. So this is what this looks like. People are like, what does that even mean? Sorry, if a corporation has $100,000 in profit, they have 100 shareholders. So they get taxed on $100,000 in their profit. So now they have $79,000 to deal with. Now they have 100 shareholders. Now you're saying, okay, well, maybe the shareholders should get like, you know, maybe $790, right? That's not bad. But here's the thing: corporations don't have to distribute their profits to you. They can basically retain their earnings, they can reinvest it in something else, or they can give dividends. So I tell people all the time, like, you're looking at Amazon has a whole bunch of profits. They have a whole bunch of profits. What do you think they could give it to their shareholders, but they're like, no, we're a tech company. We have to reinvest in our company to allow it to grow. So a shareholder from a corporation may or may not get anything, but from a REIT, you have to actually get that money. So the REIT has $100,000 in profit. They don't get taxed on that first level. So you have $100,000 going to the shareholders. So they have to distribute at least 90%. So say they just keep 10% for themselves as the company, they have to at least push out $90,000. So they have 100 shareholders. What does that mean? $900 per shareholder. So again, that's why you're interested in a REIT. You're like, oh, REITs are dope. I'm really going to get a guaranteed dividend from this company. And that guaranteed dividend, you can take it in your pocket or you can reinvest in the company to get more shares. So that's why I tell people all the time, and they really don't believe me, but when they see stuff like this, real estate is the most favored asset in the tax code by far.
Right.
By far. You have the exchange only available for real estate. You have the ability to keep rolling over your gains basically at forever, into other properties. You have the ability to do a self-directed brokerage account. So you basically put real estate in your retirement account. There's so many different ways. They have depreciation. I mean, they're like, oh, well, yeah, you can take a deduction for depreciation every year. And depreciation is basically like taking the value off of a property every single year. But you're like, but the house is still fine. But you're taking depreciation, so you get to take that off of your income. So again, real estate is the place to go. I gave you guys, there's two marijuana REITs that I wanted to briefly touch on, and then we'll wrap up, is that you have Innovative Industrial Properties, which is called IIPR. That's publicly traded. It's been publicly traded for almost 3 years. About next month, it'll be 3 years. The high, it's trading at $77. The high, this is per share, was $130 in July. The dividend yield is approximately 4%. Right now, it's like it's approximately 4%. It's like 3.9%. And then they have Treehouse Real Estate Investment Trust. They're trying to be publicly traded. The New York Stock Exchange has basically blocked them from being traded because they said, well, you deal with cannabis, and cannabis is not one of the conditions of being on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ Stock Exchange, that you don't deal in any illegal business. And the New York Stock Exchange position is, oh no, you're dealing with illegal business. And they're like, so Treehouse is like, what do you mean? You have IIPR on here. If we're dealing in illegal business, so are they. So either they get this be listed or you get us on. So they're in litigation right now with the SEC. They had documents filed in August of this year. I don't know what the resolution is.
So what is the difference? Like why is there a bias there?
We don't know, and neither do they. So that's why they fighting. So they're like, what's up? What's the problem? So, but that's the biggest thing with the REIT is it basically frees up money for cannabis company to be a lot more nimble. So basically, if they have a house or they're operating out of an establishment, they're able to take that money, sell it to a third party, and basically lease it back. So they're able to get this. So basically, they're able to sell it for $1 million. We'll say. So remember, these people are cash poor. So they're able to sell the property to this REIT, and they lease it back for this 5-10 year period. But that being said, they're able to get an infusion of cash to them, so now they're able to operate, and this other company is basically,
and then they take all the losses, so they ain't paying no taxes.
Well, it depends on how they look at it. I mean, it depends on how the accountant actually sets it up, but yeah, they could. So they can actually do a bifurcation and kind of do some other stuff. So there's some stuff that they can do, but it puts them in a better spot. But again, look how real estate is able to kind of infuse money into the business, and they're able to still stay there. So I think those are the things that we need to look at, like, oh, okay, that's dope. So, but I wanted you to look at those two REITs and kind of be on the alert for REITs, because if real estate is what you do, this is the first place I want you looking in marijuana. Invest in the things that you know. So there's basically 5 ways to invest in cannabis. Like I said, I have a class. Nico, I think I need to get you your thing, because I'm giving it for $97. I've been teaching for a while, and I feel like, it's Black Friday. I want people to get involved. I want you to be educated, and I'm going to give it to you for $97 with Nico's code. So the sale ends tomorrow at 11:59 Eastern Standard. I need to get you, and the link is the IB Investor Teachable, but Nico has her own and her own code, and she'll have her own link. So that's something for you guys to get on top of. So I hope you, let me get out of here. I hope you found this really to be helpful, to be enlightening, because again, there's a lot going on. It's really hard to manage. And of course, my computer wants to act up. Let's see. Wait, am I here? Oh, what happened?
Yeah, I see you now.
Good. I was like, what's going on? So that being said, there's let me get this for you. Let me get this.
So I'm really excited. I don't see a lot of questions coming in. I thought mainly people were just listening and paying attention. And I really, like I said, I really appreciate you, because this is all, very new to me. But I just feel like a huge sense of urgency for us to be participating in it. And so I really, really, really appreciate you, because not a lot of us are informing a lot of us about it. You have a lot of people who are speculating. You have people saying, get in, but they literally have no route for you to get in. They have no instructions. They have no information. It's one thing to say get in, and it's something completely different to say, okay, this is how you go about doing it, and this is why you should do it this way. So, I want to talk to you offline too, because one thing that I am hell bent on doing, and that's starting a REIT. I like, it's been in my ear for the past 5 years. A friend of mine years ago said, I want to read, this Caucasian guy I knew in California. He was frustrated because he couldn't get family members to put together a REIT. He's like, all we need is 100 people. And I said, why? He said, because that's the minimum amount of people that you need. But with my Facebook following and just what I've been able to do so far, I'm really ready to move in that direction. And I think that, we should absolutely. And I would love for you to help me put that together, because like I'm just ready. I'm ready to buy land. I'm ready to invest. I'm ready, and I'm ready to lead the charge with those. Let's see. Someone has a question, says, I joined pretty late. Um, can't buy these REITs. Can you buy these REITs with the IRA? If so, what's some pretty good IRAs to buy those REITs?
So I think that that's a great question. So one of the biggest things that we have to remember is that an IRA is basically a basket. And depending on where your IRA is, depends on what you can put in that basket. And so if you have your IRA with a brokerage company like a Merrill Lynch, an E-Trade, a Ameritrade, a TD Trade, I feel like there's a whole bunch of them. If you do it there, then you could actually purchase a publicly traded REIT with them. Like I said, there's only one that's existing right now, which is IIPR. Treehouse is in litigation. They're not publicly traded yet. We'll see what happens with them. And then we'll work from there. So you can purchase it in your IRA if you have it with a company that allows you to purchase stocks. So it's just like so think of a REIT like a stock for a real estate company and it's publicly traded. So a REIT can be private or they can be public. So Treehouse is a private company, but right now they want to be publicly traded, but they're trying to get through that process. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, another person asked, do they have lifetime access to the course, or is it limited?
Oh, no, it's lifetime access.
That person that asked said they wanted to move their 401k this week.
Okay.
To invest, let's see. I'm looking for other questions. If you guys have questions, please ask now so that we can go ahead and get them answered before we lose this very intelligent, articulate young attorney, investor. And I mean, she's just amazing. Like when she and I spoke the other day, like very few people captivate me. Because I'm so knowledgeable about so many things, and I read a lot and I study a lot. But when she talks, I listen. When she talks, I listen. I just find her to be just so amazing. Let's see. There's also a cannabis ETF that you can purchase as well.
Yep. There's a couple.
You said what?
There's a couple of cannabis ETFs. There is YOLO, which is it's advisor shares. That is one. And there is MJ, which is another one. I think there's one more that I'm like offhand forgetting, but there's a couple of cannabis ETFs. So there's different ways to get it. You can buy the company directly, and I talk about this in the class. You can buy it directly, looking at a specific company. You can buy basically a cannabis bundle, or you can buy looking at a cannabis REIT. So it just really depends on where you want to go with it. And then you also, and a lot of federal government employees can't buy cannabis companies directly. So they have to kind of look at other companies that kind of benefit from cannabis but aren't a cannabis company, like Scott's Miracle-Gro or Cree Lighting or something like that. So there's a lot of stuff that we talk about in the class. So
yeah, so in the course, kind of give them an idea about what they can expect to get out of it.
So we'll talk about more about what's going on with what is cannabis, how it works, how the grow cycle works, because that's a bigger thing. That's a problem that they're having in Canada, that they can't grow it quick enough. And they're having kind of like, sometimes they'll have like a shortage of cannabis, which isn't good if that's your whole business, right? We also talk about the history behind cannabis. And I tell people all the time that history doesn't repeat itself. It does rhyme. And this is exactly this whole state versus federal setup is the same thing that happened with prohibition in the 1920s, how they were able to kind of get rid of prohibition of alcohol. So we talk about that. We talk about 5 different ways to invest. We talk about the companies directly. We talk about American companies. We talk about American companies. We talk about the REIT, which is basically, we talk about competition, all of the companies that are also touching the plant that you may not have heard about but are good investments. And then we talk about the pooled investments, which are the ETFs, kind of like the bundle of cannabis companies or cannabis touching cannabis affiliated companies. And we also talk about the risk cannabis, because it's not all like, daisies and, and happy grass. I mean, sometimes, it's a very volatile market. If you've been following cannabis for any period of time, you've seen that it hit a peak and then it kind of did the electric slide down. So also talking about those things.
Let's see, here's another question. what are the best cannabis support industries, pick shovel businesses during the gold rush?
During the gold rush,
With like they're like, I think I know what they're saying. It's kind of asked in kind of a different way, but like what I would say, and I'm not the expert, y'all, but what I would say is packaging, right? That will be one for sure.
Yeah, packaging is a big one. There is, like I said, real estate is also a big one. Looking at the alcohol companies, tobacco companies that are involved, like those are kind of the plays that you may want to look at that are not directly touching it, but they actually do support the plan. Also, testing facilities. At the time when cannabis does become legal, they're going to have to test it. And those are things, and I talk about that all in the class.
Yes.
So I get it. We talk about it from different ways because once you understand the industry,
having labs.
Yep. There's a couple of labs that are, there's one big lab in Massachusetts that's really kind of taking the lead.
So great questions, you guys. You guys have any more questions? Because we're going to be logging off shortly. My advice to everyone is get in where you fit in. Get in where you fit in. It won't hurt. I think that we have been pushed out and pushed around, and in order for us to take control of our situation, we have to be involved. We got to stop talking so much. Yep. There's so much talking, and there's so little actual investing. And I really, really, really appreciate you, Courtney, because a lot of people don't share the information. Like they'll talk in in these ambiguous ways that never really say exactly what it is, never really tell you exactly what to do. So I definitely appreciate you coming onto the platform today. I'm really excited. It's my first live YouTube. I'm just excited all the way around. Thank you to all of my followers who are here. Thank you, because you guys know I'm usually on Facebook, but I really want to start moving more towards YouTube. And share this information, share the link. Thank you so much. If you guys don't have any more questions, we're going to let her get back to her Sunday afternoon. I'm going to let you get back. The link is in the comment area. I will also post it on my Facebook. I'm just really, really excited. Like, I'm ready, you guys. Like, I'm going to talk to her about the REIT. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. I'm going to talk to her about setting that up because I think it's critical. And I think that I have enough influence and caring for the community to get it going. Like, I really would like to see us win in that area. Okay.
It's going to be great. So I will talk to you later. Anybody who wants to get in contact with me, I'm pretty much hang out on Instagram. I'm the Ivy Investor on Instagram, THEIVY Investor. Also on Facebook, the Ivy Investor on Facebook. I tweet, not really. Every so often I'll go on a Twitter rant and then I go back in my hole. So that's the places that you can find me. Neko, thank you for creating the platform, having the conversation. The State of the Black Dollar was amazing. We're still talking about it. We're still having conversations based on that.
Yeah, we're going to run that back soon.
So thank you for having me. I'm going to hop off and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah.